Deputy Prime
Hi
Minister.
guys. Hello.
Mr. Joly, thank you for taking the
Kamala
question.
Harris tomorrow in your government tomorrow in Poland. What can Canada and the U.S. do together to help this continent out that is dealing with this unprecedented crisis right now?
Well, we heard from the Prime Minister. I mean, I think I think the Prime Minister's remarks today at Atlantic Brücke and with the Chancellor made very clear how important Canada's direct role is in being a very strong voice in tightening the sanctions, and also how important the unity, transatlantic unity, but even more broadly, unity of the democracies in this effort. And the Prime Minister, just one final thing, the Prime Minister also underscored Canada's commitment on Ukrainian refugees and welcoming them to Canada. And maybe Mélanie wants to add a few things.
Yes, thank you. A couple of things. I think the role that Canada has been playing in this crisis is really to make sure that the West is united. And so in that sense, we're very close to President Zelensky. Prime Minister Trudeau talked to him this morning. I talked to the Foreign Minister this afternoon, Dmytro Kuleba, who is on his way to Turkey. And at the same time, we are in close contact with our European friends and Americans. And in that sense, that is helpful, but we need to continue to keep that unity. We need to work on energy together. We need to work also on the question of sanctions.
Minister Freeland.
Juste sur la question de l'énergie, est-ce que, Mme Freeland, vous pensez que c'est une bonne idée pour le Canada d'augmenter, d'avoir plus d'exportation de pétrole et de gaz canadien vers l'Europe? Oui ou non?
Le chancelier et le Premier ministre ont parlé de ça et pendant notre réunion bilatérale, on a discuté ça. Pour nous, l'Allemagne est une partenaire extraordinaire en ce qui concerne l'environnement et aussi l'énergie. Et la chose importante, c'est qu'on a déjà pour beaucoup d'années travaillé en étroite collaboration avec l'Allemagne en ce qui concerne le climat. Maintenant, on a l'opportunité d'aider l'Allemagne dans son travail pour le climat parce que l'Allemagne aura besoin des sources d'énergie qui ne sont pas russes, mais des sources d'énergie qui sont essentielles dans la transition climatique. Et peut-être Mélanie va ajouter?
Oui. Mais est-ce que vous pensez qu'on doit augmenter, qu'on doit avoir plus d'exportation de pétrole et de gaz vers l'Europe et de construire toutes les infrastructures qu'il faut, par exemple un pipeline pour faire ça? Est-ce que ça, vous pensez que c'est une bonne idée?
Je pense que si nos alliés, Allemagne, qui est un pays qui est très très verte et qui croit que l'action sur le climat est très importante, si l'Allemagne dit que nous avons besoin de l'aide pour notre politique climatique, je pense que c'est important pour le Canada d'écouter ce que nos alliés allemands disent et c'est ce qu'on a fait aujourd'hui.
Si je peux juste ajouter, désolée, sur la question de l'énergie et des changements climatiques. Je pense que le Canada est engagé dans la lutte contre les changements climatiques et ne va pas baisser ses gardes au niveau de la lutte contre les changements climatiques. Je pense également qu'il y a beaucoup d'opportunités au niveau de l'hydrogène. Le premier ministre Legault a mentionné qu'il y avait une volonté de développer l'hydrogène vert. Ça va nous faire plaisir de travailler avec le gouvernement du Québec sur cette question.
Your call with Kuleba today, was he optimistic? What does he say? Is he hopeful? Can he get a deal? Do something here?
Well, the first priority for Ukraine and for the West is definitely to make sure that humanitarian corridors are negotiated and that they're followed by Russia. We need to make sure that civilians are safe under this dire situation. Second, any form of negotiation needs to be preceded by a ceasefire. Canada supports definitely the position of Ukraine on this situation, and meanwhile, we'll continue to impose maximum pressure on President Putin's regime because it is working, and we need to continue to do just that.
But ministers, with all due respect, not long after the Prime Minister spoke with President Zelensky tweeted a video of the bombing of the maternity hospital in Mariupol, and he wrote, "Atrocity, how much longer will the world be an accomplice to ignoring terror? Close the skies right now, stop the killing. You have the power, but you seem to be losing humanity." How do the two of you respond to that?
So, all of us in our government are in very close contact with our Ukrainian partners. I spoke today with the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, so we talk to them a lot, and we're very aware of what's happening. And I have to say, you know, when I look at those pictures, I have to stop looking at them. It is an atrocity what is happening in Ukraine, and I think a person would have to have a heart of stone to not be moved, and to not be moved by the appeals of President Zelensky. We're supporting him a lot. We're supporting him with the toughest sanction regime a major economy has ever faced. We're supporting him with direct lethal aid, and Canada's playing an important role there. But the reality is, when it comes to the actual fighting, the Ukrainians are fighting alone. And they're fighting, they're fighting for all of us, but they're fighting alone. So I have to say, speaking for myself as a person, I find those appeals incredibly moving. Having said that, as the Prime Minister said clearly today, the position of Canada and our NATO allies on direct conflict with Russia is also very clear. And I think we need to understand that this is a conflict where we cannot fail. We must win, Ukraine must prevail, and we have to be prepared to be there with Ukraine and to provide all the support that we can. At the same time, we need to be very, very thoughtful around escalation. And that's the line that we're walking.
But is the West losing its humanity?
Well, first and foremost, what the West is doing is to support Ukraine and President Zelensky. And that is why President Zelensky and Prime Minister Trudeau has been in close contact. I think that looking at this conflict on a geopolitical level is, you can't find a better friend than Canada for Ukraine. That being said, it is completely outrageous what is happening right now. It has a human toll. That's exactly what Chrystia just mentioned. And we're very seized of this. We're all very emotionally involved in this conflict. This is a fight between right and wrong, between truth and falsehood. We know that. And that's why we're here. That's exactly why we're here.
I want to say one more thing just to Murray's point, because I think it's important. Don't underestimate the power of the world's democracies working together with Ukraine to come up with new creative ways to support Ukraine. Already since the conflict began, we have done a lot that no one ever dreamed of, no one ever conceived of, and we continue every day, every hour, working really closely with the Ukrainians to think about new ways to ratchet up the pressure on Russia and to provide additional support to Ukraine. So I do want people to understand that we get the stakes that are involved. This is a must-win situation, and expect continued support and continued pressure in novel ways.
Does that mean that Canada has to increase its defense budget? You have a budget coming up. Canada is lagging its allies, NATO. You're in Germany today. The Prime Minister acknowledged the changes Olaf Scholz has made. Canada has not made that, so will it?
Well, we do have a budget coming up. I'm not going to make budget announcements today, but one of the reasons that I am here is because the geopolitical situation has just changed tremendously, the geopolitical and geoeconomic situation, and it's very important and valuable for me as we finalize the budget to have some first-hand conversations about exactly the changes on the ground. And certainly defense spending is something we have to look at carefully.
Does that mean the security, that when you're saying the geopolitical changes, are you saying that Canada needs a stronger security system in this new shifting world?
I'm saying exactly what I said. I think that Putin's invasion of Ukraine is a pivotal moment for the world, and it's a pivotal moment for Canada. It's a pivotal moment when it comes to security. But there are also economic consequences of this war, and we have to take all of those into account as we finalize the budget, and we are.
Can I ask about the Prime Minister in the remarks afterwards in the Q&A? He talked
about it being easier for refugees to move on into European countries that can't just get across, but you are aware many want to come to Canada. So are you considering airlifting refugees who want to come to Canada directly out of some of the bordering countries who can't cope with them?
Everything is on the table when it comes to refugees. I guess
understand that, Minister. I'm
being
just trying to get the
Ukrainian
airlift
Canadian,
thing.
my emails are full of sort of specific requests from specific people talking about coming to Canada. The Prime Minister was very clear that there is no limit on the number of Ukrainians who we are prepared to welcome to Canada. He's also right that it is physically the first place where Ukrainians will come is to Europe, and after that we are very happy that Canada will be able to welcome them. Mélanie, do you want to add anything?
Yeah.
Airlift's a thing you're going to do.
There's a couple of things on that. So first and foremost, what we did a month ago was to make sure that we had safe passage agreements with all the neighboring countries of Ukraine. And afterwards,
Citizens trying to get out.
yes, but I'll get to that, Tonda. The other thing we did was to work with the UNHCR. And now the UNHCR is establishing itself in Moldova and in many of the countries to deal with refugees. Our colleague Chrystia is in Moldova today talking with the UNHCR. So obviously we're having conversations with many countries regarding logistics, but we're also having conversation with the UNHCR. Why is that relevant? When we dealt with Syria, we dealt with the UNHCR at the time through Jordan, Turkey, and also Lebanon. And so in that context, these conversations are happening because definitely we want to make sure that refugees come back to Canada, but at the same time, we need to do things well, and the humanitarian efforts around the world is being organized as we speak.
Except that we understand there are no extra resources. For example, here in Berlin, where the embassy is seeing its Ukrainians show up at the door. I don't know if it's quadrupled or octupled, whatever, but it's gone from like 4 or 5 a day to 160 a day. So you don't even have extra resources there. Like, what are you doing to make it easy for refugees to get into Canada? Besides a phone line.
What we've done, and the Minister Fraser has been clear on that, we were very creative in our way to make sure that we could process claims very quickly, hence the super visa program that was announced. That is the way that can make sure that things can happen very quickly for refugees. And I must commend my colleague Sean Fraser for thinking about that.
Yeah, and I would, Tonda, just underline that. We have been preparing for this terrible eventuality for months now. We had our first meetings at the end of last year of a group of ministers, and one of the things that we started thinking about then was, we called it the God forbid scenario. And if this were to happen, what would Canada do about Ukrainian refugees? So Sean Fraser and the Department of Immigration have been working on this, and they have been fast-tracking Ukrainian claims. They continue to do that. And I want to point out one other thing, which is Canada as a country which is good at welcoming refugees, and as a country with a very well-organized Ukrainian-Canadian community, is really well-positioned to welcome this group of people. I know it just personally from the number of people who are renting apartments, getting ready to have a welcome home for these people.
Minister, there have been a lot of
minutes ago about novel ideas, about the need to move forward with new ideas. The Prime Minister's been here for a few days, lots of meetings. You guys have had lots of meetings. We haven't heard any major announcements about something new. So I'm wondering if you can tell me, are there new ideas being discussed behind the scenes that you just can't share at this point? Or what can Canadians expect in the coming days?
Yes, there are. We need to work on them with our partners, because that's how we can be most effective. But I really want to assure you, everyone now understands in the Alliance of Democracies that this is a fight that we can win and that we must win. And I think we really have to recognize the extraordinary role the people of Ukraine have played. They have resisted so much more effectively than anyone was predicting before this occupation began, before this war began. And that in turn has really I believe, inspired the world's democracies. And we now understand not only the stakes here, but that we can win. And so I do want to assure all Canadians that we continue together with our allies to be working on additional ways to support Ukraine and to constrain Russia. And the Ukrainians themselves are playing a very big role in that effort.
To Abigail's
And-
point about
and-
the announcement.
If I can
Yeah,
add
sure.
just a second. I think that many countries around the world have announced sanctions, have announced oil bans, for example, but countries around the world are in the implementation of it. And implementation is as important as the announcement of it. And so that is why this phase is critical, because our sanctions take some time to have some impact. But it's starting to have impact in Russia, and we know this is having an impact also on really the Russian regime. The second thing I would say is more sanctions are coming, and you'll have more information in due course.
And I want to just build on one thing that Mélanie has said. You know, there are some actions where we need to act together with our allies to have an impact. The de-swifting of Russian banks is one example. The actions on the reserves of the Central Bank of Russia is another. There are some areas where we've judged we could move first and maybe inspire our partners to also move. An example of that would be Canada choosing to stop importing Russian oil and gas. We were the first country to do that, and you see others are moving in that direction. Another example is our decision to deny most favored nation status to Russia and Belarus. Only North Korea previously was in that position, and you're now seeing in the US, in the EU, in the UK, a real desire to move in that direction. So that is another way in which Canada can have an impact and is having an impact.
Une très grande proportion. Mais bien entendu, à ce stade-ci, au niveau des livraisons, nous voulons faire en sorte, pour des raisons de sécurité et stratégiques, de garder cette information avec les Ukrainiens.
Can I just
Mais on sait que nos premières livraisons ont été effectuées de façon avec beaucoup de succès. Le Premier ministre l'avait mentionné et on continue de travailler avec nos alliés sur la question. Mais c'est très important que non seulement cette aide-là soit trouvée, soit annoncée, mais qu'elle se rende et qu'elle se rende dans les mains des bonnes personnes. Alors c'est ce sur quoi on travaille à tous les jours.
Et je veux ajouter que notre collègue Anita Anand, elle travaille en étroite collaboration avec son homologue ukrainienne. Et les Ukrainiennes savent très précisément les capacités du Canada et ils nous donnent très précisément, ils nous disent très précisément ce que le Canada peut donner à l'Ukraine pour aider l'Ukraine. Alors, et Anita fait ce travail en étroite collaboration avec les Ukrainiennes. C'est très efficace.
Can I ask one question? Just to zoom out for a moment.
We're so generous, it's incredible.
I know, it is. Thank you, guys. Just to zoom out for a moment, you know, a lot of Canadians are back at home kind of wondering and watching this trip and seeing a lot of photo ops, a lot of broad platitudes, and not many specifics when it comes to details. Why couldn't these meetings been done from Canada? Why does the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Defence Minister need to be in Europe right now when there are a lot of domestic issues at home that are very important, and some people view this as a photo op trip to Europe?
Well, the only person I've heard saying that is you. But
there are many people that are saying that.
But let me just say that this is a really important trip for the Prime Minister and for Canada. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is the most important geopolitical issue in the world right now. And the fact that the Prime Minister has been able this week to have direct conversations with our leading partners around the world is absolutely essential. It is his responsibility and his duty at this critical moment to be here having those direct conversations, particularly because Canada and the Prime Minister himself has a very close relationship with Ukraine, we have a very good understanding of what the Ukrainians need, and having the Prime Minister able to have those conversations makes a big difference. And I will point out, these are very sensitive security issues, and it's hard to have these conversations even over secure lines. So it makes a big difference to have these conversations and to have these meetings. I would say that you could judge us as a government to be derelict in our duty to Canadians and the world were we not rolling up our sleeves and being involved in these direct, very substantive conversations.
If I can add, dealing with millions of people fleeing Ukraine throughout Europe, being dispersed, and thousands of lives at stake, and millions of lives at stake is not platitude. And I don't think Canadians think that.
The American president is doing it from
well,
the White House.
my colleague Blinken and Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris is in Poland tomorrow.
Just to say, I reject your question.
Yeah.
And not only that, I would say that Canadians expect us to be here, and that's exactly why we're
and
here.
I will be having supper tonight with the German finance minister. That is an important relationship and an important conversation for me in understanding what the economic impacts of this war are as we finalize our budget.
Juste une dernière question. Qu'est-ce que ça vous fait d'être devant la porte de Brandebourg, un symbole de la division en Europe, alors que l'Europe est de nouveau plongée en guerre?
J'étais ici, pas à Berlin, mais en Europe, quand l'Union soviétique s'est finie. Et c'était un moment très joyeux, un moment joyeux pour les Allemagnes, pour tout l'Est de l'Europe et aussi pour les gens de l'Union soviétique. C'était un moment de libération. Et pour moi personnellement, d'un côté, c'est un moment très très triste de savoir que les conflits en Europe ne sont pas finis, que la liberté et la démocratie sont toujours menacées. Mais je suis complètement d'accord avec le Premier ministre aussi, que je crois en la réussite de l'Ukraine, je crois en la réussite des démocraties et de l'idée de démocratie. Mais on doit travailler pour ça. C'est pour cette raison qu'on doit être ici. On doit faire le travail.
Puis, la porte de Brandebourg, c'est un symbole d'espoir. Et on est dans cette mission présentement, tout le gouvernement ensemble, de trouver une solution pour arrêter cette guerre complètement sale et inacceptable. Pour ma part, mon conjoint est d'origine allemande, donc la famille a été dévastée par la guerre. Sa grand-mère a quitté l'Allemagne après la guerre. Donc, venir ici et s'occuper du conflit avec ma collègue, avec le Premier ministre, en fait, c'est empreint d'un grand symbole, mais plus que d'un symbole, d'une mission. Et je pense que les Canadiens, comme je le dis en anglais, face à sa question avec laquelle je n'étais pas d'accord, les Canadiens, les Québécois s'attendent à ce qu'on soit ici aussi. Merci.
OK.
Merci.
Thank you very much.